Have you ever stopped to think about what's running in the background of your mind? You know, the invisible program that shapes every decision you make, every single thing you believe? Well, that's what we're digging into today. We're talking about culture and how it acts as your mind's hidden operating system.
And let's start with this amazing metaphor from the Dutch professor Geert Hofstede. He said, culture is the software of the mind. I mean, just think about that for a second. It's like this invisible programming that helps you navigate the world, solve problems, and just make sense of everything around you.
So that begs a pretty big question, right? If our culture is our mental software, then who wrote the original code? And how does it get installed in all of us? That's exactly what we're going to unpack right now.
All right, so to understand the code, we first have to look at the blueprint. We're going to explore the really deep roots of how this incredibly complex software gets built for every single society on Earth.
So what is culture, really? Well, it's not just one thing. It's the whole package, right? It's the shared values, the rituals we perform, the symbols that mean something to us, our core beliefs. It's all those thought patterns that a group of people learns, shares, and then passes down from one generation to the next.
Okay, so take a look at this diagram. This is basically the blueprint we're talking about. You can see right here how these foundational things, like geography and history, actually influence how our social institutions get created. And those institutions are what install the core elements of culture into our minds. Let's break that down a bit.
So we can boil this whole complex diagram down to three pretty simple steps. First up, you've got the origins. That's your geography and history setting the stage. Second is socialization. This is how the software gets installed, through our families, school, and the media. And finally, we get to the application, where we actually use all that programming for our daily decisions.
And if we dig a little deeper into those foundations, you see just how huge the impact of geography is. I mean, historically, things like agriculture spread way faster from east to west than north to south, simply because the climates were similar. And of course, history leaves its mark on a culture's values. And then you have the social institutions, family, religion, school. They're the ones who really set the rules and pass them on.
Okay, so we've seen the blueprint. Now let's zoom in a little closer and look at the code itself, the specific elements that make up our cultural programming and pretty much tell us how to operate in the world.
These 5 elements right here, they're the core components of that cultural software. You can think of them as the fundamental commands that dictate our behavior, our deeply held values, our repeated rituals, our shared symbols, our core beliefs, and even our unique thought processes. Put them all together, and that's the functional code of a culture.
Now, this is all great in theory, right? But let's see how this stuff actually works in the real world. And there's no better case study than how McDonald's had to completely adapt its business to succeed in the unique cultural landscape of India.
I mean, look at how McDonald's literally put this code into practice. They respected religious values by getting rid of beef and pork entirely. They catered to local taste beliefs by creating the Michelou Tiki Burger. They designed their stores around the ritual of family dining. They even changed their kitchen processes to have separate areas for veg and non-veg food. It's a masterclass in cultural adaptation.
And symbols are just as critical. Take Coca-Cola. The brand is recognized everywhere, but their symbols get local. By using something as powerful as a dragon during Chinese New Year, they connect their product directly to a really deep and meaningful cultural ritual. So smart.
So if every culture has its own unique software, how in the world can we compare them? Well, it turns out there are actually frameworks for that. Let's take a look at how we can analyze these different operating systems using data.
And this is where that guy, Geert Hofstede, comes back into the picture. He developed this model of cultural dimensions that lets us measure and compare cultural tendencies across different countries. It gives us a real, data-driven way to see the differences.
And here is that framework in practice. This chart scores a bunch of countries across these key dimensions. I mean, just look at the wild difference in the individualism scores. You can see at a single glance just how differently these cultural operating systems are programmed.
Let's just zoom in on that one contrast for a second. Individualism. Denmark scores a super high 89. That reflects a society where people are pretty self-reliant, and business can be very direct. But then you look at Brazil with a score of just 36. It's a collectivist culture where people are woven into these strong family groups. So if you're doing business there, building relationships isn't just a nice thing to do. It is absolutely essential. We're on the same planet, but running completely different operating systems.
So clearly, understanding these differences is, well, it's everything. For our final takeaway, let's look at a really practical tool you can use to navigate these cultural codes in your own conversations, day to day.
And that brings us to this fantastic idea of high context versus low context cultures. This is such a key concept because it explains why communication styles can be so different around the world. It really all comes down to where the meaning is found. Is it in the words you say or in the situation around the words?
And the difference is just huge. In low-context cultures, think Northern Europe, North America, the message is explicit. Communication is direct. The motto is basically, say what you mean. But in high-context cultures, across Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, most of the meaning is found in the context, in the relationship, the nonverbal cues. Communication is way more indirect, and the expectation is that you'll read between the lines.
So, what we've seen is that culture really is the software of the mind, and it's installed by our history, by our environment. No version is better or worse, it's just different. And just recognizing the code that's running in ourselves and in other people, that's the first step to truly communicating. So the real question is, now that you know your cultural software is running, how are you going to use it to connect with the world?